There's been a lot of great celebrations in sports history. Some of my favorite are the Icky Shuffle, Terrell Owens throwing popcorn in his face, and when it comes to baseball, you always think of Jose Batista's bike spat. I want to put Nick Castellanos' ring finger celebration in that mix. I don't know where that came from or how he decided to do that, but it irritated a lot of people, and I personally loved it. And a lot of the Philly teams are irritating people with the way that they're winning, and we'll get into the Philly success, the Eagles success, and hopefully Sixers success on this episode of Sports Talk Philadelphia. Welcome back to Sports Talk Philadelphia. As always, I'm your host, Aidan, and I'm joined by a slightly smaller panel today, but still a great panel. On my immediate left, for the first time almost ever, is Mike Holden. Mike, how are you?
Good. Red October, full swing.
Yeah, we're definitely excited to have Red October back. And then to my left, we're happy to have Riley Kapchuk returning. Riley, how are you?
I'm great. Happy to be back.
Yeah, we're happy to have you back. So we're going to get right into the Eagles to start off, who had a very scary win on Sunday. It was a lot closer than we thought it was going to be, but they did come away with the win in overtime against the Commanders, 34-31. Jalen Hurts, great stats, 25-37. First time this year passing over 300 yards with 2 TDs. DeAndre Swift added another rushing TD, but was held for under 100 yards for the first time since week 1. A.J. Brown, 9 receptions, 175 yards, and 2 TDs. And Jake Elliott hitting the game-winning 54-yard field goal. Mike, I'm going to go to you. What was your takeaways from this game?
A lot of frustration. It definitely wasn't a game where I walked away saying, oh, that was a great win. I mean, it was definitely a thrilling win. Jake Elliott has been just so great. He's been so great for so many years now. But yeah, it was a win that really did not feel great, but you know, they pulled it out. Just like I always say, good teams pull it out. But yeah, they had so many opportunities to win that game. Play calling did not look good at all. Yeah, there's so much to fix. I mean, the Commanders, you know, last week the Bills made Sam Howell look like a terrible quarterback, and this week we made him look amazing. But you have to give credit to the offensive coordinator too for the Commanders as well, being Eric Bieniemy. But yeah, he had a great game plan. But yeah, it was not pretty, and they probably should have won that way into regulation.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of moments where they could have come away with a win. But Riley, when you have a kicker like Jake Elliott, you have to feel pretty confident every time that the game's on the line that you can just call him out and he's going to get you the game winner no matter what.
Yes, the last games, when the kick was needed, he definitely delivered. He delivered the kick, and he especially delivered this past game with the overtime win after his kick.
Yeah, and it was great to see that the offense, Mike, finally looked a little bit more like itself. You mentioned that they struggled, but to see Jalen pass for over 300 yards, to see A.J. Brown get those 2 touchdowns, that's got to feel really good for the Eagles fans that were worried that the offense, especially the passing game, just wasn't there early in the season.
Yeah, it definitely looked much better than it did the first 3 weeks of the season. It looked much better. There were some times where it did look, you know, the offense was just stalling out, but for the most part, it looked much better than the first 3 weeks of this season. And, you know, you have to give credit to Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, an amazing game. I thought it was going to be the Devontae Smith game just because he had a great game last year against them. But A.J. Brown, again, second game in a row, has played amazing. And, yeah, DeAndre Swift, I just feel like they were not handing him off the ball much in the second half at all when they really should have, especially like in overtime. I forget what it was, the end of the drive, but they just were not handing the ball off when they definitely should have. And it was just frustrating. But, yeah, they played well, but there's definitely so much room for improvement, and they can just keep improving every week, hopefully.
Yeah, there's also a lot of improvement that can be made on the defensive side of the ball, but Nicholas Morrow has been amazing stepping up in the replacement of Nakobe Dean. 10 tackles, 3 sacks, 1 forced fumble. Unfortunately, that forced fumble led to a Commanders touchdown since it was at like the 1-yard line. Josh Sweat had 3 tackles and 1 sack. And we also had a sack by Hassan Reddick, his first sack of the season. So, Riley, I'm going to go to you. Nicholas Morrow has been out of his mind. It's hard seeing that he'll get replaced once Nakobe Dean comes back.
Yes, so after the defense definitely got it together after a slow start with Nicholas Morrow's 2 sacks through 3 quarters, 3 sacks, his first of the season. It definitely was something that we needed to see, especially after the slow start, like I've said. But once they tightened up in the second half, it really displayed what defense could do once they were put out there.
Yeah, in the second half, you definitely saw the defensive line get pressure that they just didn't have early on. But, Mike, there was a lot of late penalties. Terrell Edmonds had a couple late hits. We got a couple late hits by other defensive players. They need to clean up those penalties if they want to be successful against really good teams.
Yeah, and, like you said, they're really good teams. I mean, they've gotten lucky that they have played, I wouldn't call the Commanders a bad team, but they've gotten lucky that the Commanders aren't a great team. And the schedule's only going to get harder. I mean, we're getting into that tough part of the schedule now. We got the Rams, and then I forget next week, but then after that, we have games like the Niners, Bills, Cowboys twice. I mean, you're playing good teams back to back, and you can't be making the mistakes, like you said, like they have been doing. But, yeah, I mean, the defense, like Riley said, they play good. Nicholas Morrow has been so good, and he's not even – I mean, he wasn't brought in really for that, pass rushing role. He's not really a sack player, but he was all over the place, and that's what they need. Linebacker has been so tough for them, but hopefully when Dean comes back, they can complement each other along with Cunningham in that linebacker position.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the Eagles haven't played great teams yet, but they're still 4-0, which is a great position to be in. Only them and the 49ers are left as an undefeated record. You've got the Cowboys right behind them, who bounced back really big after a shocking loss to the Cardinals, won like 38-3 over the Patriots. The Commanders 2-2 now, but they're still very competitive, more competitive than people thought, and the Giants just do not look very good after last year's playoff run. Riley, when you see how close the Eagles and Cowboys are, do you still feel confident the Eagles can win the division?
I still feel confident the Eagles could. The Eagles' main mentality is winning. They are all about winning. As long as they win, they're good. So if they keep this streak up, they'll have that confidence going into the Cowboys game to actually play them with their full potential.
Yeah, and Mike, we saw the Commanders already. They've been sort of up and down, 2-2 record. I think that we can safely say that the Giants just do not have a shot anymore at this division. But the Commanders could be a wild card team, and as we saw last year with the Giants, those wild card teams can be a little bit tricky.
Yeah, and I mean, they like a division opponent. You have one more game against them. Their defensive line, I think that every time we play them, the main thing is how it's all first rounders in that defensive line. They're good for a reason. But yeah, like you said, the Giants are out of the picture, which is pretty funny to watch. And then you got the Cowboys, who definitely bounced back. But I think next week will really be the telltale of how good they are against the 49ers and kind of see if they are a legit team, and we'll see.
Yeah, and when you compare, again, this is very far down the road, but the Eagles do have a game against the 49ers. So I'm going to ask both of you this. Do you feel confident that the Eagles are the better team than the 49ers, or do you think that the 49ers still look a little bit better?
I think the Eagles, it's very close. I think right now it's probably the 49ers, just the way the Eagles have looked, but also the 49ers have not also looked like their full potential either. So I think both teams have ways to go, but I think they're pretty even right now.
I'm not going to give up on the Eagles. I'm going to say they're going to still show out, and we're going to have another good look going into the Super Bowl, hopefully. And we'll carry it out. We'll carry it strong, and we'll beat them.
So, yeah, I'm thinking like week 11. You're thinking like way ahead of that. But, hey, I like it. I like that confidence. The Eagles definitely have that confidence going into their game against Los Angeles Rams. The Rams right now, 2-2, same as the Commanders' record. They did beat the Colts 29-23 in overtime, which is a very good win. Matthew Stafford last week, 27-40, 319 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. And the guy that's been amazing for them is Puka Nacua, who was a 5th-round rookie. No one had ever heard of this guy. 39 receptions, 501 yards, only 1 touchdown, but he has been the replacement for Cooper Kupp, who's been out the first 4 weeks. Cooper Kupp might be back this week, too. So, Mike, those are 2 high-power offensive players. What did the Eagles have to game plan to shut them down?
Yeah, I mean, Puka Nacua, he's definitely winning a lot of people's fantasy weeks throughout these first 4 weeks. But, yeah, he's been – is Kupp coming – is he supposed to come back?
There's rumors that he might come back, but no one's 100% sure.
Yeah, I mean, if he comes back, I mean, that's obviously another threat. I mean, that Stafford-Kupp connection is just unreal. And it seems like Matthew Stafford always – I mean, I think Nacua has the record, and I forget what the record was, but the only other person on that list was Calvin Johnson, and Matthew Stafford was his quarterback. So something with Stafford and these records, but yeah, Puka Nacua has been awesome. Their offense is good. I mean, they just won a Super Bowl a couple years ago. Stafford's still getting back to that form. But yeah, they're a good team. Their defense is pretty good. I mean, you have Aaron Donald, who's amazing. So it should be a tough game, but at the same time, it's another game the Eagles should win.
Yeah, and then I'll just ask you guys right now before we wrap up, what do you guys think score prediction-wise, and what do you think is going to happen in this game?
I feel as if it's going to be a closer kind of game, but I'm still rooting for my Eagles, and I think it's going to be 30-23 Eagles.
That's a good guess. I'll say like the same, maybe like 31-17.
Yeah, I'm thinking 31-27. I'm thinking another close one, but I think the
Yeah.
Eagles pull it out. We're now going to go to the Phillies, who started their postseason run recently, and their first game was a very, very successful one. They won 4-1 over the Marlins. All 9 starters got a hit, which was very good to see. And the winner of this series will go and face the Braves. So, Mike, going to start with you. What was your biggest takeaway? What do you think was most successful with the Phillies this game?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing foremost is Zach Wheeler. You know, he looked dominant. The whole thing last year was he kind of was starting to fade out a little bit towards once we got into the World Series, and you know he had the injury at the end of the regular season last year. But he looks fresh. He looks healthy, and he was dominant yesterday until the 7th inning. Just started to fade out a little bit, but you know he gave them 6 and 2/3 an inning, and that's what you need. And the offense, like we were talking earlier, 11 hits, but they only scored 4 runs. They probably should have scored 3 or 4 more. A lot of base running mistakes, but overall they got the win, and we'll see what they can do in Game 2.
Yeah, one of the most iconic moments was Harper running through the third base sign, being told to hold up, and he just was not about to do that. Riley, when you see a play like that, you can just tell that there's confidence not only within Harper but the entire team, that they feel like that they can make a play happen no matter what's going on in the situation.
Yeah, definitely. Last night, the fans definitely brought a well-needed adrenaline for not Zach Wheeler himself. That's definitely a big one, but the whole team. All of the 9 starters hitting. We have all of that. And then just the overall vibe has created a bigger velocity for the players to play, advance.
Yeah, you could definitely tell that the players were feeding off that. So that's something that Trey Turner said after the broadcast. You could see that in the way that Harper plays for the home team, or for the home fans. It's just really good to see the fans show up. And Mike was talking about Zach Wheeler, who did have a very, very good performance. 6 and 2/3 innings, like Mike said, 5 hits, 1 run around, and 8 strikeouts. Wheeler's postseason stats now are 2-3 with a 2.55 ERA and a 0.73 WHIP, which are all amazing numbers. And then you got Aaron Nola going in Game 2. So, Riley, I'm going to go to you first. What was your biggest takeaway for the way that Zach Wheeler played in this game?
This was definitely one of his best games. I don't think there's anything negative about that. He was MVP of the game. He couldn't quite finish the 7th inning, but regardless to that, I feel like the fans gave him that adrenaline, and his average 4C velocity was a full miles per hour higher than his season average. So that there shows enough.
Yeah, and that sort of shows what Mike was talking about, making sure that he's back to full strength. So when you're hitting a velocity like that with a guy that needs to throw fast like Wheeler, very, very good to see. Mike, you're now going to go to guys that have struggled a little bit this year after Wheeler. Aaron Nola struggled a bit. You're going to have to get a Ranger Suarez at some point this year, who hasn't looked great since he came back from his injury. Do you think that the rest of the rotation can sort of get up to where Wheeler's standard has? Because he set a pretty high standard for the rest of the rotation.
Yeah, I think starting just with Nola for Game 2, I think this is his biggest game he's ever pitched as a Philly. This is to get us to the next round. This could be his last home start. Who knows what's going to go in the offseason. It's been an up and down season for him, but hopefully he can end it strong. And he's been up and down, like I said, but hopefully tonight it's a statement game and just something that we can see for the rest of the playoffs. But like you said, he's had his struggles. He had a decent postseason last year, but Wheeler's been really the main guy, and everybody else has struggled. But hopefully Aaron Nola can really set the tone tonight for the rest of the playoffs.
Yeah, and you definitely need a guy like that to set the tone. The one thing that hasn't set the tone so far is there was no home runs in the first game rally. I don't see that lasting very long. I know people like winning with the small ball, but at some point a home run needs to happen for this team to be successful.
Yes, that's mainly where the energy is created that way, is the home runs. And then once we start hitting home runs early on, more people have more of a positive attitude throughout the game that we will win. So if it needs to be more hits on that would definitely advance us more into it.
Yeah, for sure. So we definitely are hoping to see a home run pretty soon, as great as it was to get that win the way that they did. We're now going to go to some of the other wildcard series because they've been a bit of a doozy. So for the first time in 18 years, the Twins finally won a postseason game. So they're up 1-0 in their series against the Blue Jays. The Rangers shut out the Rays, won in their first game, and are currently shutting out the Rays in the second one. And then you got the Diamondbacks, who got a nice surprising win over the Brewers. Mike, there's so much that's already happened in these postseason games, and we're just one game into the wild card series.
Yeah, I mean, it's October. I think October is probably the best sports month. I mean, with the playoffs and then football and then all the other sports starting, it's so fun. But yeah, these playoffs are already off to a great start. It's looking like the Rangers are already moving on, and yeah, like you said, the Twins finally won a playoff game, which is great. And the Diamondbacks, they beat the Brewers yesterday, which would be a pretty big upset. I mean, the Brewers have had a great year. Diamondbacks are the 6th seed, so they've been fun. And it's like you said, it's only the first day. We have 4 more rounds to go. So.
Which is crazy. Like, it already feel like that there's
Yep.
been an entire month in like one day.
Yep.
So it's great to see that for baseball. And Riley, you mentioned the fans showing up for the Phillies. That didn't happen for the Rays. And I don't want to pile on to a team that's struggling right now. But it sort of feels like with the Rays getting that small number of fans, only 19,000 for a playoff game, the energy's not there, where for the Phillies, they really need that energy.
Yeah, I'm a strong believer on if you show out for the players will show out for you. So if you can like tell, it's obvious if they're bringing the certain energy, the players' performance is showed. Vice versa.
Yeah.
If it's not there, their performance is not there either.
Yeah, and for the people that tried saying that it was due to the time, the Twins played at basically the same time in their local time that the Rays did. It was like 3:30 for the Twins, 3 o'clock for the Rays. The Twins sold out. So it's just sort of like a Rays thing. And again, not to pile onto a team that's eliminated, but fans definitely make a difference. And Mike, do you see the fans make a difference to help the Phillies move on throughout this postseason?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I said this earlier. I mean, like you said about the Twins, I think if the Phillies played at 1, it would be the same energy that it was last night at 8 o'clock. I mean, I think that's just a Rays problem. But, yeah, I mean, you saw it last year what they did. You see it with the Eagles. I mean, the Philly fans are for real. I mean, they really impact the game, and you saw it yesterday. And I'm glad that we're finally getting good national recognition and not the normal, our fans are terrible. I'm glad it's finally like, our fans are impacting the game in a positive way. I'm glad we're finally getting that good recognition.
Yeah, and there hasn't really been any bad recognition for the fans. So very good to see. A team that is starting to lose a little bit of fans is the Philadelphia 76ers, and one guy in particular has lost a lot of fans in the offseason, and that guy is James Harden. So Harden did not go to the Sixers media day. He did join the team, though, in their training camp practice, which is at Colorado State University, which I didn't even know the Sixers practiced there for training camp. And Harden, although he's now back with the team, he's very adamant that he wants to go to the Clippers. Riley, I know you have a lot of opinion on this. What is your thoughts on the fact that James Harden wasn't showing up to the media day, is finally on the team, but still it's not clear if he's going to play any games or not?
I don't know what he expects. I had strong feelings from last year when you could obviously tell he doesn't want to be in Philly. He doesn't want to play for Philly. He is selfish to only himself. I don't know if it's more of a contract thing, but he made it more than obvious that he did not want to be there. So when Philly fans, when we see these, and then when their own team sees it, it's definitely creates a negative impact on how they could play, especially if he's negative compared to the other Tyrese Maxey. He's so positive.
Yeah.
So if James Harden's so negative, how is that going to impact everyone else? And the fans, if you don't like the fans aren't going to like you. And if you don't like Philly,
It's definitely a very stressful situation for any coach. But this is a coach, Mike, who just joined the team in Nick Nurse, who is going from a tough team in Toronto where they won a championship, sort of fell as one of the prominent teams in the East Coast, and now you're dealing with all this controversy. I think he's actually doing a pretty good job, all things considered.
Yeah, I think it's a good start for them, and I feel like we're having the same conversation we had last year, just about a different player who I'm not going to name. Everybody knows who I'm talking about, but it's the same thing that we're talking about now. It's just another player who's just doesn't want to be here, and we don't want him, just like Riley's saying. We don't want him if he's just going to do this. But hopefully, at the same time, if they can't get anything back, I mean, you have to keep him, and he better play. I mean, he's going to have to play. But it's just so much. But yeah, like you said, I think Nick Nurse, I think he's the right coach for this group, and I think he will do a lot of things that Doc Rivers could not do. Yeah,
and the squad itself is sort of interesting, the fact that they brought in a lot of veterans as backups. And they're all on like 1-year veteran minimum contracts. You got Pat Bev as a backup point guard, hopefully, considering with everything that's happening here, and we have no idea. Kelly Oubre Jr. was brought in a 1-year deal, and Mo Bamba brought in as a backup. So, Riley, I'm going to go back to you. If James Harden does not play, do you see Pat Bev being a good fit as a starting point guard, considering his age and the fact that he was only brought in for 1 year?
Definitely. Pat Bev has 11 years of experience. We lost Niang, Jalen McDaniels, and Shake Milton. So without them, there's a big gap to be filled. So with his experience and leadership, his old leadership, he can bring that to the team, and I feel like that could really help us along with the newer members too.
Yeah, and one of those members, I think one of the more interesting ones to me, obviously Pat Vev is an interesting one, a guy that is a really good backup point guard for a majority of his career, really good sixth man of the year. He's won that multiple times. Mo Bamba's interesting to me, Mike, because of the fact that the Sixers have been trying to find a backup center for Embiid. And I don't know if this is necessarily the one, but it's another way that they're trying to find that backup option.
Yeah, I mean, like Riley was saying with Pat Bev, I feel like that was more kind of a locker room thing, the grittiness he brings. But yeah, Mo Bamba, I mean, the Sixers have searched for a backup center for so long. And Mo Bamba, I think he was, the 6th overall pick for the Magic. He's had kind of an up-and-down career, couldn't really stay healthy. But if he stays healthy, he could be a good backup option for Embiid. You know, obviously we see Embiid missing games. He could be a good option, you know, when he does miss those games and needs, you know, that extra rest.
So he could be a good option. Paul Reed could also be a good option. And it seems like under Doc Rivers, he did not want to play Paul Reed at all as the backup. You brought in another backup center, Riley. Do you think that Paul Reed could eventually pass Mo Bamba in minutes, or do you think that this is sort of going to be a Doc Rivers situation all over again?
I'm hoping he could pass him in minutes. I know Mo Bamba before, he didn't get a lot of playing time, and he didn't get to showcase his real talent. He was the best three-point shooting big man in the league. So if he gets to showcase that there, then he could. But if Paul Reed does get put in, that could help. And there's also a lot of other players like Jaden Springer. I think if he's put on the court, he could show out, and a lot could change. He played a little bit last year, and he's good.
Yeah, they have a lot of – I feel like the Sixers have a lot of high-energy guys on their bench that Doc Rivers just, for whatever reason, refused to play. And hopefully that'll be different under Nick Nurse. Obviously, we've still got a little bit of time before we see any type of live basketball and a while until the regular season. So we're just going to have to wait and keep talking about it until we can actually see the guys go to the court. We're now going to go into Fast Five, starting with our favorite segment, Talking Baseball, this time, though, with Mike Holden.
All right, so we talked a little bit about the wild card series, but I kind of want to just go one by one, my kind of predictions. So starting in the NL, obviously the Phillies, Marlins. I think the Phillies are going to win the series, hopefully tonight in Game 2. Hopefully they can win tonight. And then move on to face the Braves. In the other series, the Diamondbacks and Brewers, Diamondbacks won the first game. Diamondbacks, very young team. They're a hungry team. I think that could be an upset, too. I think it could go 3 games, but I can see the Diamondbacks pulling out that series in another upset. And then in the AL, the Rangers, I think, are already beating the Rays. So they're already moving on. And then the Twins and Blue Jays, I kind of thought the Blue Jays might be my dark horse, just that 6th seed, you know, facing the Twins who have not won a playoff game. And then they'd face the Orioles who are unexperienced, but they lost yesterday. Maybe this is the year the Twins can win a playoff series.
Yeah, I'd love to see the Twins win a playoff series because I remember 2009 and 2010, they played the Yankees back-to-back years. Really wanted them to beat the Yankees. They just couldn't pull it off. It's been a while since they made it to the playoffs. I think it was like last year they did. So good to see them finally get a win after that long. We're now going to go back to football. Riley, there's 2 undefeated teams left in the 49ers and Eagles. Do you have one of those teams as the top team in the NFL or a different one?
It's the Eagles. I don't know if you guys get that already, but debating that the only 2 defeated teams are right now the 49ers and the Eagles. I'm going to start with the Eagles. Yeah. Bleed green, always.
Yeah, no, the Eagles have looked really, really good. My biggest concern with going against the 49ers, Christian McCaffrey just looks absolutely unbelievable. Like, now that he's healthy, he scored 4 touchdowns in the last game against Arizona. He's looked really, really good. Again, I'm not hating on the Eagles pick. I really like that pick, obviously. But I do have concerns that the 49ers, just as Mike said, they haven't lived up to their potential yet either. And they're already blowing out all these teams. And I get it that the Eagles have had a tougher schedule, but last year it was held against the Eagles, that the Eagles had a weaker schedule compared to other teams. I don't want to do that against the 49ers. So we'll just have to see when they eventually play each other. Mike, we're going to go back to you with a baseball question. 2 teams had really disappointing years this year in the Padres and Mets. Which one did you think had the most disappointment?
Yeah, this was it was a tough decision to kind of choose because both such high expectations. Obviously, the Padres getting to the championship series last year. The Mets having that big payroll, coming off 100 wins, signing Verlander, getting Scherzer last season. So I'll probably just go with the Mets just because the all-around team with the pitching and that they lost Scherzer and Verlander before the season started. So I think just overall the expectations for the Mets, I'd probably go the Mets. But then you look at the Padres too and that payroll, that's also disappointing too. So it's definitely two disappointing situations, but I'm just glad our Phillies are in the playoffs and doing good.
I'm going to say Padres just because I don't feel like they have an actual plan. The Mets, what they did really well is they realized they weren't going to win. They tore everything down. The Padres still kept that super high payroll for absolutely no reason when they're not going to win. So we'll just have to see which idea worked out better. Riley, going to go back to you. There was a huge trade in the NBA with Damian Lillard going from the Trailblazers to the Milwaukee Bucks. What do you think of this trade?
The Damian Lillard trade. It's actually a total shock for most NBA fans. It was rumored he was either going to Miami or Toronto, and surprise, he's going to Milwaukee. In May 2022, someone actually tweeted him if he could work with one player to win the playoffs, who would it be? Which he replied, Giannis. So now that the Bucks have both Lillard and Giannis, they'll be going for this NBA season, and I'm excited.
Yeah. So do you think that that now makes the Bucks like the best team in the Eastern Conference?
I'm not going to say the best, but definitely advances them, definitely gives them a lot more potential than what they've had, and they can create off of it.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to see them. The Celtics have a really good squad put together. The Sixers are still up there with everything that's happened, so we will have to see what happens with them. We're now going to go to one final point. The Atlanta Falcons played the Jacksonville Jaguars recently in London, which reminded me of this crazy stat that happened 2 years ago with the Atlanta Falcons tight end Kyle Pitts, who's a local guy, by the way. In Kyle Pitts' rookie year, he had 1,000 receiving yards and one receiving touchdown. That one receiving touchdown was scored in London. I don't know of any other player that's only scored one touchdown, putting up those crazy stats, and it not happened in the United States. Was able to avenge himself the next year when he scored 2 receiving touchdowns in the United States. First time was in Atlanta. So it was good to see that. But if he had scored last Sunday, he would have had 2 receiving touchdowns in the United States and 2 receiving touchdowns in the UK, which is just absolutely insane that he's the guy that has this much potential, put up those great stats his rookie year, and only has 3 total receiving touchdowns. I would have loved to see him score in the UK again. I think it would have been great, but unfortunately it didn't happen. And that wraps up this episode of Sports Talk Philadelphia. Thanks so much for watching. You can make sure to check us out on our social medias at Twitter and Instagram at Sports Talk LTV. Make sure to tune in next week when we talk more about hopefully the Phillies playoff success, definitely the Eagles success, and whichever other team we happen to mention. So thanks so much for watching. Make sure to check in next time. And as always, go Phillies.